Did you struggle to get to sleep last night? I didn't, actually. I may have the solution for you if you did, though. Newly published today, a 400-page bill with an extra 50,000-page environmental statement. Very soporific. Guaranteed to get your eyelids drooping before you can say quasi-judicial process. But the government's hybrid bill for Phase 1 of High-Speed 2, that's the London to Birmingham part of the controversial rail project, may not give the government pleasant dreams. Our Adam's been looking into the technical details of a rather unusual piece of legislation.
The Channel Tunnel needed one in 1986. The last one was London's Crossrail in 2005. And now HS2 requires a rare form of legislation, a hybrid bill. So-called because it's a mixture of public policy put forward by the government, which also affects some private individuals like landowners. And it requires a lot of paperwork. The bill itself is about 400 pages long. The environmental statement that goes with it is another 50,000 pages. Altogether, that's 2 of these. Luckily, the law's been changed so that they can be published in electronic format now. Oh, and the public get 8 weeks to leave their comments. Excuse me. At some point, there will be a second reading debate and vote where the Commons approves the project in principle. That's the moment when opponents could give it the red light. Then it heads here to the committee room, where a panel of MPs will consider the pleas of people who are directly affected. It's a quasi-judicial process, a bit like a court, so there are QCs present too, sometimes in wigs. For the Crossrail project, this took 2.5 years. And believe it or not, some MPs didn't see it as an honour.
I voted against 90 days detention of terror suspects, and along with a number of my Labour colleagues was put on the Crossrail committee as a reward for that. The Tory members of the committee had voted against the Crossrail bill, so they also got the opportunity to spend 2.5 years on the committee of this hybrid bill.
It sounds like it's quite a lot of detailed work.
It is, it's an awful lot of work.
And if all that hard work is interrupted by something inconvenient like, say, an election, not a problem, because MPs can vote to carry the hybrid bill over to the next session.
Fascinating stuff, of course. Laura Burt, will this ever amount to more than those boxes we saw being pushed across the road? You guys have all said they're all protesting outside now. Is this project ever going to get online?
Well, I so hope so. I think it's really important that we do get on with this and get on with it as soon as we possibly can. I just found out this morning in Japan, they actually introduced the bullet train in 1964. We could be, in 2064, still running on the same railway that we introduced in the Victorian era. I mean, we really do need to think about not just the immediate future, but the medium and the long-term future for this country and the prosperity and jobs in this country, and linking up, you know, the Midlands with the South and the North with the Midlands and the South.
Yes.
I mean, nothing is going to be more powerful, in my view, to actually achieve that prosperity that we all want.
And we thought Labour were wholeheartedly behind it as well, until we heard all the wobbles from Ed Balls. Andrew Adonis will be very unhappy, I'm sure, is very unhappy about any chance that Labour's not going to back it. Are they?
Well, I think it's fair to say that, you know, as Her Majesty's loyal opposition, we have a responsibility to make sure that this project is on track and is within a budget, which there have been some concerns. And part of the issue is the delay.
Very laudable, of course.
But as an MP in the from the North
Yes.
West, I'm absolutely, you know, I support this, as does Labour. High Speed 2 is absolutely crucial. We were the first party to be talking about a north-south line that actually connects our country properly and will lead to the creation of jobs and growth. But it is fair that we hold the government to account. And I'm only sorry that it's taken 3.5 years from the plans that they inherited, that we're still having many of the conversations, and the fact that the Phase 2 consultations only just launched.
Well, and actually, Lucinda, Berger, I mean, people will accuse Labour of playing politics and being opportunistic. No, well, no opposition, of course, does that, and the Conservatives wouldn't have done it either. But actually, she does have a point in saying that that pressure and scrutiny, whichever way you look at it, has actually made the government work harder at keeping the costs down,
Quite right,
hasn't it?
too. Government
Yes.
spent...
So they did do a service in some ways, didn't they?
That's their job.
Yes, right.
Government spend my constituents, ladies' constituents' money. That's exactly what we should do. You know, what does a Hampshire MP think when High Speed 2 is put forward? Because ultimately, you know, it doesn't directly affect me. No. You know, I think as a wider country view, exactly what Laurie says. I think we need to do this. I think it's about capacity. It's very unfortunate that it was ever called high-speed rail because it was only ever going to cut a very short time off journeys to the north.
Yes.
But, you know, I'm interested. People say to me, oh, don't back it because it would mean it's either that or investment in the rail infrastructure down in our part of the world. And it's not that, because there's huge amount of infrastructure investment going into South West Trains Network Rail in my part of the world as well. But this is part of the future. This is part of linking up.
You don't think it'll be redundant by the time it actually comes on? I mean, Laurie used the example of Japan. We'll be so far behind that the next thing will have come along.
No, I don't. I think there's a huge capacity crisis in our railways at the moment, and this is there to meet that, and I hope we get on with it.
West Coast Main line as well. But I'm a bit confused with what Luciana is saying, because aren't Labour saying two separate things? Aren't they not backing it because they're worried about the cost? But the northern councils are
furious.
Well, absolutely, they're quite aghast at those comments because they want it so much. It just seems to me there's a bit of schizophrenia, if you don't mind me saying so, with both the major parties.
The Shadow Chancellor should rightly, as you know, the ultimate responsibility on the opposition side for the nation's finances, to say that, you know, when this project was first put forward, it was in the region of 30 billion. We're now in the region of 50 billion. And in terms of like making sure that that money is spent wisely, and it's right, as you mentioned, that it's Labour amendments that will now ensure that if there is going to be any substantial underspend or overspend on the project, that the Secretary of State will now have to come to Parliament and to present that, and that we can have a debate about that every single year.
And it looks as if Labour has been convinced, but what about the 40 or 50 Conservatives, that's the estimate, who might rebel? I mean, how damaging is this to David Cameron politically? Let's talk about the policy.
It's a hugely controversial project. Of course it is. It's going right the way through the middle of some of constituencies held by Conservative MPs.
He hasn't convinced them, has he, or any of them, it seems?
You would be surprised if they didn't represent their constituents in that way. You know, when you get 1,000 letters from constituents, that has an impact on a constituency MP.
How damaging is it to him?
They're only doing their
job.
I don't think it's damaging to him. You know, he is putting forward a project which is about the future, and he's asking Parliament to support him. And I think, and I hope, and I believe that will exactly will happen. The majority of Parliament will back him. I'm fully expect that the Labour opposition will come on board and support this, and they must do, because it's a national infrastructure project. It will span the next election, and whoever's in power, we need cross-party support.
And so you think it will be online?
Yes.
You're all confident that it will actually end up happening?
I think the challenge is that in the current Department for Transport's plans, we're supposed to have royal accession on this legislation by 2015. At the moment, we're not on track to meet that, and I think that's a great shame. And I hope the government really does get control of the budget and get this plan back on track.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, crueler members of the media, not me,